Hello everybody. Today we are going to work through Chapter 3, Make a Logo with Shapes. So today we're going to cover how to create a new document, what is a bleed, we're going to use the tools and commands to create a variety of shapes, we'll understand live shapes, create rounded corners, discover other ways to round corners, and then we'll work with drawing modes, use the place command, use image trace to create shapes, work with draw behind mode, simplify paths, explore text to vector, and see the latest text to vector graphic feature. Okay, so this is what we're going to be making. You'll want to make sure that you have the lesson files downloaded already. Alright, so in this lesson you'll explore the different methods for creating artwork by using the shape tools and other methods to create a logo for an adventure company. To ensure that the tools function and the defaults are set exactly as described in the lesson, delete or deactivate by renaming the Adobe Illustrator Preferences file, and then it has a few links to do that, but what you should be able to do is just open Illustrator. You can also hold Control-Alt-Shift and open Illustrator at the same time, and it should reset anything in case there was plugins or anything. Alright, so we'll start up Illustrator, and then we'll go to File, and choose L3 End, and we're also going to want to choose the other one too in a second. So let's go ahead and pull up Illustrator, and we're going to go to File, Open, and let's go to the lesson files. We're going to go to Lesson 3, and we'll pull up L3 End, and I'm going to pull up both. Okay, so the L3 End flyer, this is what it should look like in the end. Alrighty, then we are going to work on creating a new document. So this is just going to be our reference file, so we don't need to have that, we don't need to mess with it or anything, we just have it pulled up. So we're going to make a new file. We're going to do File and New, and then we'll choose Print and Letter. So let's go do that. We'll go File, New. It should pull up this dialog box, and we are going to go to Print up at the top. We'll just choose Letter. Alright, it says you can set up a document for different kinds of output, such as print, web, video, and more by choosing a category. For example, if you're designing a flyer or a poster, you can select the print category and select a document preset size. The document will be set within the units in points, most likely. The color mode as CMYK, and the raster effects to high or 300 ppi, which are all optimal settings for a print document. And then below that, it says on the right side of the dialog box, in the preset details area, changed the following. So it wants us to type in these settings. So let's put this to the side and, whoops, not OBS. And we'll put this to the side so that we can see both at the same time. So I'll go back and choose File and New. We'll go to Print. We'll choose Letter. That way it gives us all of these default settings over here. And then it wants us to put in inches. We want to set it to 8 by 8. We want vertical orientation. We want one artboard. And we don't need any bleed. Then we'll click Create. Okay. Next, enter a name for the document. Enter a name for the document in the blank space under preset details, adventure logo. The name will become the name of the Illustrator file when you save it later. So let me show you what it's talking about really quick because we skipped a step. So up here it says preset details, and we have untitled 6 right now as the default. So we could do what we did and set up everything really quick, or we can go now to recent and choose custom, which is the one we just made, and it has all of our previous settings in it, and we'll just rename it, what was it called? Adventure logo. Adventure logo. And we'll end up changing this when we save it. So what I would like you to call it is your first name, last name, your first name and last name. So let me do mine. Please don't do my first name and my last name. It'll be for week 2, and this will be the chapter 3 file. So that's what we're gonna name our final project. Let's click create. Okay. So then units, we'll choose inches from the units, so that we have, that's gonna be right here. That's what we chose. Oh, cool. I just went off the picture. I should have gone through the text. Okay, so next, click Create to create a new document. And then to save our document, we can choose File and Save. And you can either save it in cloud storage or you can save it to your computer. We don't need to do that right at this second, but I will walk you through how to do that. Right now, we just have our empty document here. So we'll go up, File, and Save. We'll say save as so that we put it in the right spot. Seems like a good spot for it. And it should pop up with this dialog box. You can leave all of the defaults and just click OK. Let's go back to the textbook. Okay. In the save dialog box, set the following options. It wants us to say that we are saving it in lessons, lesson 3 folder. And then we'll leave the format here as the Adobe Illustrator file, and that's going to be what it looks like on a Mac. On a PC, let me pull that up again, File and Save As. This is what it should look like if you're on a PC. Make sure that this is set to a .ai file. That's your working document. Later I'll show you how to export a PNG as well. Okay. Click Save, so you have the Adobe Illustrator format. It's called the native format, and that's your working file. That means that it preserves all Illustrator data so that you can edit everything later. In Illustrator Options dialog box, in the Illustrator Options dialog box that appears, leave the options at their default settings and click OK. Choose Window, Workspace, Essentials if it's not already selected, and then we'll reset Essentials. So let's do that together. We're going to go to Window, Workspace, Essentials is already checked on, and we're going to click Reset Essentials. And that will make sure that all of my tools are reset. And I'm going to close this one, and okay, we should be good to go. Look in the Properties panel on the right. With nothing selected in the document, you'll see settings for the document like units, navigating, and editing artboards, showing and hiding useful features like rulers, grids, and much more. The document setup button is where you can set options like the document bleed and more. To learn more about bleeds, check out the video at the end of the section. So we'll choose View, Fit Artboard to Window, and that means that we can see the entire artboard. The key command for this is Control-0 on a PC and Command-0 on a Mac. So let's do that together with our key command. So I'm going to zoom really far out, and then I'm going to do Control-0, and it puts our whole document back into our window for us. I would really learn that key command. That will be very helpful. Alright, so let's go to the next part. We'll learn about what is a bleed. Okay, so what is a bleed? It has a little video for us on learning about that. And then it's going to describe what are cloud documents, and I think that this is a really good section to read even though it's just in yellow, so we don't need to follow along in this section. But I want to read it to you just so that you've seen it and heard it. So aside from saving your Illustrator documents locally, you can also save them as cloud documents. A cloud document is an Illustrator document that is stored in Adobe Creative Cloud and can be accessed anywhere in your anywhere that you sign in to Illustrator. So here's how to save a cloud document and access the cloud documents. After you've created a new document or you open a document from your hard drive, you can save the file by going to File and Save As. The first time you do this, you will see a cloud document dialog box with options to save a cloud document or save on your computer. To save as a cloud document, you would click the Save to Creative Cloud button that you can see in the previous figure. If instead the Cloud Document dialog box, you see the Save As dialog box, and you want to save as a cloud document, you can click the Save Cloud Document button down in the corner. In the dialog box that appears, you can change the name and click the Save button to save the document to Creative Cloud. When working on cloud documents, when working on cloud documents, changes are automatically saved, so the document is always up to date. So that's like an auto backup, which is great. And then here's our tip. If you change your mind and you want to save the file locally, you can click on your computer in that dialog box, and an arrow is pointing to the figure. So this right here. Want to open a cloud document? Choose File, Open. In the Open dialog box, click the Open Cloud Document button, and you can open a cloud document from the dialog box that appears. Alrighty. Alright, so let's go through working with basic shapes. In the first part of the lesson, you'll create all kinds of shapes, including rectangles, ellipses, and polygons. So here we have some examples of paths, and it's saying here we have our anchor points. They look like these little squares, and then our paths are the lines that are going to connect them. You should usually have 2 endpoints, and this is going to be a closed path here. But here it is open, which I'm sure that you would have guessed, but I wanted you to know. Examples of open paths. So shapes you create are made of anchor points, with paths connecting the anchor points. For instance, a basic square is made of 4 anchor points on the corners and with paths connecting the anchor points. A shape is referred to as a closed path because the ends of the path are connected, not a closed path. A path like a line is an open path. An open path has distinct anchor points on each end called endpoints, and you can see the figure at the right here. And you can fill open and closed paths with color, gradients, or patterns. Creating rectangles. The main logo art for the Adventure Company will be a bear, and you'll start by creating a few rectangles, and you'll explore creating them using 2 different methods. So we'll choose the rectangle tool in the toolbar. Let's do that together. I'm going to scooch this over. That way we have a little bit more room over here. Okay, so we have the rectangle tool right over here. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to create a larger rectangle that will be the body of the bear. And near the top of the artboard, we'll drag out a rectangle, and then we'll release the button. So we're going to click, hold, and drag out a rectangle. It doesn't want us to worry about the size right now. We'll resize it later. And as we drew the shape, we should have noticed that the height in the little gray tooltip of the pointer, do you see that right here in the kind of example document right there? So let's do one more, and you can see it's popping up as I drag it out. So you can kind of measure as you create. So that's going to be our smart guide, and we can turn that on and off if it's not coming on with view and check on smart guides. Move the pointer over the small blue dot in the center of the rectangle, and that's called the center point widget. So that's going to be right here, and you can see that my mouse changes. When the pointer changes, it looks like this now. Drag the shape so that it's roughly in the middle of the artboard. So we'll grab that from the center, and here we can drag this around, and we can put it somewhere in the middle, as close as we can kind of adjust to. With the rectangle tool selected, or any other shape tool, this is how you need to move a shape. Otherwise, you'll accidentally redraw a new one. So if I dragged from here, it doesn't drag my rectangle, it just creates a new shape. Next, you'll create a smaller rectangle using a more precise method to serve as the head of the bear. With the rectangle tool still selected, click in an empty area of the artboard to open the rectangle dialog box. So we're just going to click, and it pops this up. In the rectangle dialog box, change the width to 2.3, and it should be inches, and the height to 1.3. So if this was saying points or pixels, you might need to type in IN. So 1.3 for the height, and click OK to create a new rectangle. Mine's backwards, that's funny. Alright, creating a rectangle by either clicking, creating a rectangle by clicking rather than dragging is useful when you need to make a shape of a specific size. For most drawing tools, you can either draw with the tool or click create a shape this way. Alrighty, editing rectangles. All of the shape tools except for the star tool and flare tool currently create live shapes. Live shapes have attributes such as width, height, rotation, and a quarter radius, and that are editable without switching from the drawing tool you're using. With two rectangles created, you'll make some changes to them so that they look more like the body and head of a bear and are scaled relative to each other. So let's select the selection tool in the toolbar. That's going to be this one, or you can press V to use the key command for that. Click the view menu and make sure that smart guides are on. A check mark will always appear next to the smart guides in the menu if they are on. So let's go to view, and we already checked this before, but now I want to make sure that it's turned on and we have that check mark. And you can push Control U or Command U if you're on a Mac. You can turn the smart guide on when they're useful, and in this case, when you resize one of the rectangles, you'll see gray measurement labels telling you what its size is. So let's click anywhere in the larger rectangle to select it, and drag the bottom middle point of the rectangle until you see the height approximately at 4.6 inches in the measurement label. So that's going to be this gray toolbar. So let's drag that out, and we want the height to say 4.6. There we go. Since your rectangle might be bigger or smaller, I didn't tell you which way to drag, up or down. You can also resize shapes with more precision in the Properties panel, which is what you'll do next. In the Transform section of the Properties panel on the right, make sure maintain width and height proportions to the right of width and right of width and height H is selected, and it should look like this. It's the little chain icon. So we want to maintain width and height. That's our little chain right here. Setting maintain width and height proportions, turning it on, is useful when you change the height or the width and you want the other value to change proportionally. So let's select the width W value and type in 2.9. So we want this one, and we'll change it to 2.9. And so what we should have is 2.9 and 4.6. Mine is so close, so I'm going to change that really quick. 4.6. Oops. And let's turn that back off. Okay, so we pressed enter or return, and that applied that to our shape over here. And then here it says, why are we being so precise? In Illustrator, you can work as loosely or precisely as you need, and I want our bear logos to be about the same size and shape, so some precision is necessary. So they're only having that preciseness because you're following this step-by-step tutorial, and they want it to look the same as each other's when you're done. So now you'll rotate the larger rectangle so that the body of the bear is horizontal. So we're going to move the pointer, the selector, and hover near the corner. And when you see that double arrow, drag it clockwise to rotate the shape. So we'll click and drag. And as you drag, we'll hold the shift key too, and it's going to lock it. So if I don't hold the shift key, it's just going to rotate freely. If I hold the shift key, it's going to try to lock it to 45-degree increments. So we want it to say 270 so that it's horizontal like this. So we say we want an angle of 270 and release the mouse button and the key. So leave the shape selected. So something that I've seen some people do is they are doing their rotation and then they hold the shift key and then they let go of the shift key before they release the mouse button. Hold the shift key, then release the mouse button, then release the shift key. Okay, if you look in the properties panel, you will also see a rotate value. There are multiple ways to do almost everything in Illustrator. For instance, you might want to rotate more freely at some random angle. You might do it by dragging rather than choosing a rotation angle, and in the properties panel. Now you'll drag the smaller rectangle onto the larger rectangle, and with the selection tool selected, you can drag from anywhere within the shape bounds as long as it is filled with a color, a pattern, or a gradient. And you don't have to use the center point like this, like you did previously with the rectangle tool selected. Drag the smaller rectangle onto the larger rectangle where the head of the bear should go. So we'll do it kind of like this picture. We're going to grab from that center point and we'll drag it just about here. Let's change the color of the shapes. By default, shapes are filled with white and have a black stroke or border. Next, you'll change the color of both rectangles so that to brown so that they start to look more like a bear. With the smaller rectangle still selected, click the Fill Color box, which is going to be right here in the Properties panel on the right, and it may be lower in the panel. In the panel that opens, make sure that the Swatches tool is Swatches option is selected at the top, and select a brown color to fill the shape. So let's go for this medium brownish. Press Escape to hide the Swatches panel before moving on. Okay, and then change the stroke width on the Properties panel to 0. So we will set this to, we'll type it 0. Click the larger rectangle to select the body of the bear. For practice, change the fill color to the same brown to set up the stroke and set up the stroke width to 0, following the same steps from before. So we'll do the same exact thing. We want to set that to 0 or to brown, and we'll change the stroke to 0. So now they should be exactly the same as each other. And we can choose deselect. We can also just click off of our shape in this gray area here. Rounding rectangle corners by dragging. The rectangles you created don't look very much like a bear yet. Luckily, we can round the corners and of the rectangles to make them more interesting. So click on the larger rectangle to select it, and then let's zoom in a little. We can either go to View and zoom in like this, or we can hit Control plus and zoom in just a little bit. And it's going to be Command plus on a Mac. You need to see the live corner widgets, these little targets in each corner of the rectangle. If you're zoomed out far enough, the live corner widgets are hidden on the shape, so zoom in until you see them. So they're talking about these right here in the corner, and they're saying if it's too far out, you might not be able to see them. I've kind of changed my settings so that they're a little bit more visible. But just in case you can't see them, make sure that you're just zoomed in more. Okay, so in each corner of the rectangle, if you are zoomed out far enough, the live corner widgets are hidden on the shape. Zoom in until you see them. Drag any of the live corner widgets in the rectangle towards the center to round all of the corners, and drag it until the corners are as round as they can be. So they'll turn red like this whenever it's at the maximum roundness. So this isn't quite there yet. We want to drag it all the way in until it turns red. The more you drag towards the center, the more rounded the corners become. If you drag a live corner widget far enough, a red arc appears on the shape, indicating that you've reached the maximum corner radius. Click to select the smaller brown rectangle, the head of the bear, and drag any live corner widgets to round the corners a little. So we'll go over to here and scroll over just a bit. Whoa! And let's round the corners, but we don't want to go all the way to the red. We just want it to be a little bit rounded. Alright, leave the smaller rectangle selected and choose File and Save. So let's do a File Save, and you can just hit Control S if you want to. Okay, so now we're going to work on rounding individual corners. You can also round individual corners using the Selection tool. So next you'll explore rounding the individual corners of the head of the bear. So with the smaller rectangle selected, click the live corner widget on the top right corner to select it, and then release. So what we want to do is just click on this one. You can see that it turned blue and the rest of them are still deselected. And it says if you move the pointer away, you will see that the widget has changed in appearance from this to this. If you drag the corner widget now, it will be the only one that changes. So now drag the selected corner widget away from the center of the shape to remove the rounding. But be careful if you don't click and release and then drag, you won't select just one corner widget. Instead you'll round them all. So really, it says just be careful and make sure that only this top corner is selected. And let's do the previous step and unround the lower left corner. So let's do that again. And it says be careful, you don't want to accidentally start rounding all of them. You want to click this one so that it's the only one selected so that we can straighten that out. Follow the previous steps to remove the rounding from the lower left corner. Click the corner widget in the lower right corner and release to select it. Then drag it towards the opposite corner, rounding the corner as much as possible. So we'll click on this one, round it as much as possible. And we can choose select and deselect, or we can click off and we can do a file save. Okay. It says here that they have a video for you if you wanted to watch it. And there are so many ways to round corners. To learn more ways, check out the videos Discover Other Ways to Round Corners, which you'll find in the web edition. For more information, see web edition, select section of getting started at the beginning of the book. So changing a corner type, they have round, inverted round, and chamfer. So now we're going to work on that. So aside from dragging to round corners, you can also use the properties panel to change the type of corner radius and make more precise adjustments. The three types are shown in the figure at the right. So now you'll make a copy of the larger rectangle and change the corner types for a few corners. This rectangle will become the belly of the bear. So let's choose fit, view, and fit artboard into window. I'm going to do Control-0 to do the same thing. And then we're going to select the larger rectangle and copy it. And we'll choose edit, copy, and then we'll paste it by doing edit, paste. So you can do edit, copy, and then edit, paste. You can also do Control-C and then Control-V. So I'm going to do that, Control-C, Control-V, so now we have a duplicate. Drag the copy just below with the other rectangle. So we'll put that down here, and it's okay in Illustrator if it's hanging off the edge. In some other programs, if you push it off the edge of the canvas, it erases. That is not the case here. Plenty of people do a lot of their work, their like sketches almost, their practices off the canvas so that they can drag what they need, whatever assets they need, onto the canvas. Okay, so you might need to select two okay. You might need to select the two original rectangles and move them up a bit. If you do, make sure that you select the copy again before continuing. So let's grab everything and let's just move it up a little bit. And then let's make sure this bottom rectangle is selected. In the Properties panel, click More Options in the Transform section to show more options, and it's circled in the following figure. So we are going to go to Transform. We're going to click these three dots right here, More Options. And let's see, it says ensure the link corner radius values is off, and it should look like this. So it's just saying here, we want to click that off. So these are our link corner radiuses, our corner types. And each corner value in the panel, each corner value in the panel corresponds to a corner in the shape. For the next step, pay attention to which corner is adjusted in the figure. Since the rectangle was rotated earlier, the corner values in the panel no longer seem to correspond with the correct corner in the shape. So let's change the lower left and lower right corners of the rectangle to 0. And So it's saying that these are going to be our two side values. They should be these two if we had drawn our shape out horizontally in the first place. Since we rotated it and it's set to 270, it's not going to correspond like it said. So let's change these over here to 0. And you see it did one to the left of that almost, or one clockwise of it. Aside from changing the corner radius, you can also change the corner type. You can choose between rounded, which is default, the inverted round, and the chamfer, like we saw in the picture way up here. Change the corner type setting for the upper left corner and the upper right corner of the rectangle, and we're going to choose chamfer. So we're going to choose for these two on the left, these two right here, we will set it to this third option called chamfer, and we'll do that for both of these. Make sure the corner radius from the same corners, make the corner radius for the same corners smaller, and then make them both around 1 inch. So we just need to have 1 inch in here, and we'll do tab and 1 inch again. And we can press the escape key to close the options panel and leave the rectangle selected. Let's drag the side handle to make the shape narrower. So we want to set it to 2.9 and 3.1 it seems. 3.1. There we go, 3.1. Drag a side handle to make the shape narrower, see the figure, and then we're going to create an ellipse. So over here we are going to go to the ellipse tool, which is nested under the rectangle tool. Next, let me read this. The ellipse tool is used to create ellipses and perfect circles. Next, you'll create an ellipse with the ellipse tool to make an eye for the bear. Press and hold the mouse button on the rectangle tool, and in the toolbar, and select the ellipse tool. So what it's saying is we were on the rectangle tool. We need to click and hold so that we can reveal the rest of the tools, and we'll choose the ellipse. When you draw the circle, that will become the eye of the bear. Make it bigger than the eye should be so that you can work with it more easily. In the empty area of the artboard, shift drag to make a perfect circle. That will become the eye of the bear. As a reference, I made mine about 1 inch in width and height, and then you can release the mouse button and then the key. So what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag out a circle, and as I drag, I'm going to hold the shift key, and that makes a perfect circle. So now it's not an oval. Shift key makes it a perfect circle. And we're going to do the same thing we did before when we were rotating, where we release the mouse button and then the shift key. When an ellipse is a perfect circle, you will see the magenta crosshairs in it as you're drawing with Smart Guides turned on. So zoom into the circle and choose view, zoom a few times, or you can do command and plus a few times, or control plus on a Windows. Editing an ellipse. With the eye shape circle created, now you can change the appearance and put it in place. So press the letter D on your keyboard to apply the default of a white fill and a black stroke. Press D. This is a keyboard shortcut that I use a lot to remove formatting from shapes and get them back to default. That's what D stands for. And then the appearance of a white fill and a black stroke. So we'll change the stroke settings in the properties panel to 19 points. I'll type in 19. We need the fill to be black and the stroke to be white, so the opposite of what is applied right now. To swap the fill and stroke colors, click the swap fill and stroke arrow at the bottom of the toolbar on the left. So that's going to be right over here. We'll click on that. To see everything, choose view and fit into artboard. I'm going to do Control 0. And then we'll drag the circle by the blue center dot, right here in the middle, onto the head of the bear as you see in the figure. So we've got a giant eyeball right now, but we're going to scale it down. So next you'll make the eye smaller. By default, the stroke width weights do not scale. They stay the same, so if you were to make the circle a lot smaller, for instance, the stroke weight would stay at 19 points and look rather large. So you can see that up here. To scale the stroke as the circle scales, you can turn on an option. So we'll click the More Options button in the Transform section. So we've got the Transform section, we're going to click the More Options. And then we'll select Scale, Strokes, and Effects, and that panel will open. So we'll click over here. Shift drag the circle to make it smaller, and when it's small enough to look good, release the mouse button and then the Shift key. And then we'll drag the eye to where we want it on the head, and then we'll do a file save. So let's use our selection tool. I can drag it, but I don't want it to squish, so I want to hold Shift as I scale. And we'll make it pretty small, and we'll just put it where we want it to be. That looks good. And then we'll do a file save. Okay, let's change the stroke alignment. As you've seen, strokes are borders of an object or path. By default, the strokes are center on a path, which means that they go along the path line. Half the stroke weight is on one half, and then half of it is on the other side. So that's what it's saying right here. This red line here is our path, and then our stroke is going to go around it. You can also change it to a line on the inside so that the stroke is fully on the inside of that path, or a line outside so that the stroke is fully on the outside of that path. You can adjust the alignment so that the stroke appears in the center by default, inside or outside, and next you'll change the stroke so that you can still see the fill of the eye. With the eye circle still selected, zoom in by pressing Command plus or Control plus on a Windows a few times, and then click the word stroke in the Properties panel to open the stroke panel. So we will click on our circle, zoom in a couple times with Control plus, and then let's click on the word stroke, the text here. In the stroke panel, click the Align Stroke to Outside button. So that looks like this one. It's going to be this right here. So we've got the Align Stroke. We want it to be Align Stroke to Outside. I hope you can see the difference when the stroke is aligned to the outside. Zoom in if you need. To. I made the eye a little bit smaller after aligning the stroke, and then select, deselect. So they said that if it's too big, we can scale it down a little bit again, and then we can deselect. Let's create a pie shape from an ellipse this time. So in this, it kind of looks like a little Pac-Man. Ellipses have a pie widget that you can use, or that you can drag to create a pie shape. Next, you'll create a new circle and turn it into an ear. So we are going to create another ellipse using the ellipse tool. And we're going to change the stroke weight in the Properties panel to 0. So before we drag anything out, let's set the stroke to 0. Shift drag to make another circle in an empty area of the artboard. So we'll hold Shift as we go and drag out. And this circle is going to become the ear of the bear, but you can make it bigger and scale it down later if you want to. With it selected, do you see the pie widget? That's going to be this little doohickey that pops out over here. It's on the right side of the shape, and you can drag that to make a pie shape. So we'll drag that pie widget clockwise around the bottom of the ellipse and then release it. So we're going to make a shape kind of like this, it shows. Notice that there is another pie widget in the same place from which you started dragging. So now we have two right here. The pie widget you dragged is called the pie start angle, and the other pie widget is called the pie end angle. Drag the other pie widget, the pie end angle, from the same place counterclockwise around to the top of the ellipse. Don't worry about how far. So we're going to drag this one. Oh, it says it doesn't matter how far. So here's our tip. You need to remove the pie angle and go back to a whole circle. Just double click any pie widget. So we can double click it and make it back to a whole circle. And we can put these back to where we had them. The ear shape you are making will look best if we see exactly half of it, which requires the two widgets to be precisely at a specific angle, which is going to be 180 degrees, and you can adjust them with precision in the Properties panel. So in the Properties panel, to the right, click on More Options, and in the Transform section to show the more options, and then choose 90 from the Pi Angle Start menu. So we'll click over here. We have these two pi angles, and we want this one to be 90, and we want the next one to be 90, and that will add up, negative 90, and that's going to add up to 180 degrees. So negative 90 is also 270, so let's do that together. We can set it to 270 degrees. We can press the escape key to hide the panel, and then we can we can drag the half circle ear on top of the bear's head. So we can click and drag drag the half circle ear on top of the bear head, and then with the ear still selected, change the fill color properties to a lighter brown than the head, and then we'll try adjusting the size of the ear to make it look like a little bit better, and rotate it just a little bit. So we'll scooch it over here. Let's change the fill, and let's rotate it a little bit. So I'm going to drag my arrows. That looks pretty good. Want a little practice? You can make a new ear or copy the one that you have to give the bear two ears. Let's do that. I'm going to hold the Alt key and click and drag, and that's going to drag out a duplicate for me. I'm going to rotate that just a little bit. And in the last section, we learned about arranging, so I'm going to click on this Arrange tool and send it to the back. That way, one's in front and one is behind. That looks not so much like ears to me, but that's okay. Drawing lines. Lines created with the Line Segment tool are live, and similarly to live shapes, they have many editable attributes after they are drawn. So next you'll create a line with the Line Segment tool, and this line will become a leg of the bear. So press and hold on the Ellipse tool and select the line segment. So let's go over, let's do Control 0 actually, and let's press and hold on the ellipse and choose this Line Segment tool. In an empty area of the artboard, press and drag in any direction to draw a line. Don't release the mouse button. So as we drag, what we're going to do is press the Shift key to constrain the line to a 45-degree angle. Notice the length and the angle in the measurement label next to the pointer as I drag, and drag directly to the right until the line is about ½ an inch in length. Then we'll release the mouse button and then the Shift key. So I'm going to click and drag a line. I'm going to hold the Shift key and it's going to lock it to a 45-degree angle increment. I want it to be horizontal, and then in my little gray dialog box I want that to say 0.5, and then I'll release. Now you'll rotate and change the stroke width and color of the line. With the line selected, change the stroke width to 90 points in the Properties panel to the right of the document. So here we can go to stroke and change this to 90. It doesn't have one by default, so let's just type it. And then click on the stroke color box in the Properties panel and make sure that the swatches is open. And then we'll select the panel that appears, and then we'll select the same brown color as the body of the bear. Since this is a leg and the bear's leg is not horizontal, it needs to be rotated. Yes, you could have drawn it that way, but we wouldn't be exploring rotating lines that way. So we'll click on the stroke color and then we'll change it to brown, and then it wants us to rotate this line, which seems a little bit strange, but it's okay. So to rotate it, we want to hold Shift as we drag so that it's going to be lined up to 90 degrees. So let's do that together again. With the new line selected, move the pointer just off the right end, and then when the pointer changes to that little rotate arrow, press and drag up until you see an angle of 90 degrees in the measurement label next to the pointer, and that will make a vertical line. So it wants us to hover over here until we see that double arrow pop up, and then we'll rotate up and we'll hold shift to set it to 90 or to adjust it quickly to 90. Choose fit view, fit artboard and window, or press Ctrl 0. Select the selection tool or press V in the toolbar, and then drag the line by the center point to make it a leg for the bear. And we still have this guy over here. I'm just going to scooch him to the side. So let's grab our rectangle. What's happened? There we go. We want to click from that center point and we'll stick it right on our bear. Note, if you resize a line in the same trajectory as the original path, it will snap to that same trajectory. You'll also see the words line extension and on appear on opposite ends of the line. These appear because the smart guides are turned on. So what it's saying is if we drag it down, you can see when I'm going straight down, it turns pink and it says line extension and on. So I don't need to do that. I'm going to do Control Z to undo, or you can do edit and undo. Control Z, it'll say Command Z if you're on a Mac. Okay, it's a little short, so let's make it longer. For the following figures, I moved the belly shape that was below the bear out of the way. Cool, so we'll do the same. Make a copy, drag the end of the line to make it longer. Cool, sounds good. Let's select it and then drag that to be longer. And let's see, it says it wants it to be 1 inch. And I'm going to change it over here too, just so that it's even. And then it wants us to make a copy by holding Alt and dragging to the right. And that'll be Option and drag to the right if you're on a Mac. The line to where the other leg should be, and then release the mouse button with and then the key. So I'm going to click on my line. I'm going to grab from that center point. I'm going to hold Alt or Option. I'm going to drag it to the right. And I have that pink line show up, so that means that they are aligned to each other. And then I'm going to let go of my mouse and then my button. And then I'm going to select both of them and scooch them over with the arrow key. That way they look like they're attached fully. Okay, so now we are on to creating polygons. Using the polygon tool, you can create shapes with multiple sides, multiple straight sides. By default, the polygon tool draws a hexagon with 6 sides. But what's different about polygons is that they are drawn from the center, and polygons are also live shapes, which means attributes such as size, rotation, number of sides, and more remain editable after you create them. So now you'll create several polygons to make the claws of the bear. Press and hold the line segment tool, and we'll switch it to the polygon tool. So we'll go to line, and we'll switch it to the polygon tool. Let's turn off smart guides, and then we'll deselect. So we'll go to view, we'll uncheck smart guides, and then we can do select, deselect. And mine's already deselected, but don't worry. Okay, so press the letter D on your keyboard to apply default of a white fill and a black stroke. Otherwise, the stroke will be a rather large 90 points. So if I start dragging, it gets a bit big. So let's press D to switch it back to normal. And then move the pointer into an empty area of the artboard, drag to the right, and draw out a polygon. And as you drag, hold the shift key to straighten the shape. Release the mouse button and then the shift key. So we'll drag out a shape. I'm going to hold shift to lock it to straighten, and then I'm going to let go of the mouse, then the shift key. Notice that you didn't see the gray measurement label this time, since we turned off the tooltip. Since it's part of the smart guide that you turned off, smart guides can be helpful in certain situations, such as when precision is necessary. Maybe you want to know how large the shape is, and this can be toggled on and off when needed. So we will click on the fill option, and we want to set it to none in the properties panel. So make sure that the swatches is selected. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Click the fill color box in the properties panel, and for some reason it was already set to none in theirs, but it's set to white on ours. We have our selection, and then we want to change it to the lighter brown. So I'm going to go for the one that the ears are. And then change the stroke weight in the properties panel to 0. Choose View Smart Guides to turn those back on. View, and we will turn on our smart guides. And now you'll make it look like a triangle, more like a claw by turning the shape into a triangle. With the polygon tool still selected, drag the little side widget, the diamond on the right side of the bounding box up to change the number of sides to 3 and making it a triangle. So we're going to grab this little, let's scooch it over so that it's a little bit more closer. And I'm going to zoom in so that we can see it better. Okay, so we're going to hover over this diamond, and you can see that plus minus pops up. We can change the number of sides by dragging this up or down. We're going to set it all the way up so that it's 3 sides. And then let's do a file save. And now editing a polygon, you'll change the size of the polygon to create a nail from it. So we'll use the selection tool in the toolbar. You can click it or you can press V on your keyboard. Drag the polygon to the bottom one of its legs. So let's zoom over a bit. And let's drag it so that it's over here. And we want it to be aligned with that. That's pretty close. Okay, there we go. Zoom in on the claw by pressing Command and plus on a Mac or Control plus on a Windows. And then to make it smaller, press and hold the Shift key and drag a corner to change the width and height proportionally together. When it looks like the size of a proper claw, release the mouse button and then the Shift key. So let's navigate over so we can see the full bear a little bit better. And I'm going to scale this, but I want to hold Shift as I scale to scale it proportionally. And then let's scooch it over. And maybe we want it just a little bit smaller. That seems good. Let's see, it looks like they went with 0.35. I'll do the same over here. 0.35. And I'm going to turn that on. Alrighty. To make it smaller, oh sorry, we read that part. So our note, depending on how big your polygon was to start, you made it either larger or smaller in this step to match the height that we suggest. With the polygon shape now created, you'll round one of the corners so that the claw looks a little less sharp. We need to round only one of the corners, so you will select the corner you want to round. With the selection tool selected, a polygon shows only a single live corner widget so that you can round just one corner with the selection tool. To round only one corner, you will use the direct selection tool. So let's use the direct selection tool in the toolbar and then click on the widget in the corner showing the figure. So that's going to be this white one here. It's also A on your keyboard, so you can do V for the black one, A for the white one. And we want to select just the bottom right corner. And then since it is a live selection, we can edit our corner radiuses. So we're going to drag the selected live corner widget towards the center of the triangle to round out the corner just a little bit. So we don't need it to be fully, we just need it a little bit more round. Select the selection tool, so we'll push V for the selection tool, and it switched to the black one up here. And then drag the triangle into the position that you'd like it, or that you see in the figure. So we've already done that on my version, but feel free to do that on yours. And then we'll make a copy. So we could do copy and paste, or we could do edit, paste in front. So let's try that together. We'll do edit, copy, and then edit, and instead of paste, we'll do paste in front. And then we can drag that new version over. And I want to zoom in just a little bit and make sure that is lined up with the bear. There we go. Looks good. Okay, a copy is placed directly on top of the original. Drag it into place onto the other leg and match it up with the figure. Next we are going to create a star. Next you'll use the star tool to create a star that will become the tail of the bear. Currently the star tool doesn't create a live shape, so editing the star after the fact can be challenging. When drawing with the star tool, use your keyboard modifiers to get the number of points that you want and change the radius of the star's arms, so the length of the arms. And then here are the keyboard modifiers that you'll use in this section when drawing the star. We can use the arrow keys, shift, and then we can use command or control. So the arrow keys, when we press up and down, are going to add arms, like numbers of points to the star. As you draw it, and the down arrow is going to remove them. Holding shift is going to straighten the star, and then holding command on a Mac or control on a Windows and pressing this key while dragging to create a star allows you to change the radius of the arms of the star. So let's do that all together. We're going to create a star, and it'll take a few keyboard commands, so don't release the mouse button until you're told. This section may take a few tries. Press and hold the polygon tool and select the star tool. So we're going to click and hold. We'll go to the star tool. And you can also click on the document window with the star tool and edit the options in the star dialog box instead of drawing it. So we can always just use the dialog box instead. In an empty area of the artboard, press and drag to create a star. Drag until the measurement label is shows a width of about 1 inch. And then stop dragging, but don't release the mouse button. So I'm going to drag out a shape. I'm going to look for it to say, let's see, our radius doesn't pop up. Let's do that one more time. In an empty area of the artboard. Okay, well, let's do our bestest. So we have our shape. And then we're going to hit the up arrow a few times to increase the number of points to 8. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8. There we go. I still haven't released the mouse button. I'm still messing with it. Hold control or command and start dragging towards the center. And as you see in the figure, and then towards the center of the star a short distance as you see in the figure, and then stop dragging without releasing the mouse button. Release command or control, but not the mouse button. So we want it to look like that third figure there. Maybe something like this. And I'm going to let go of control, but I'm still holding my mouse button. And then press shift while the star straightens out. And then release both the mouse button and the key. We're going to do the mouse first, then the shift key. Mouse, then shift key. Alrighty, I'm going to scooch that over. With the selection tool, this one, drag the star onto the back end of the bear, as you see in the figure, and then we're going to change the color to a darker brown. So we'll stick it right on this tail. I'm going to scooch it in. I'm going to hold shift as I do. And we'll change the fill color to a darker brown. We'll click on the arrange button in the properties panel and choose send back to send the star behind the rest of the bear, and then drag it into the position of the figure. So we'll say arrange, send back. Alrighty. And let's see if we set it to 1 inch. That looks really big. I'm gonna make an executive decision, 1/2 inch. There we go. Working with drawing modes. Illustrator has 3 different drawing modes that allows you to draw shapes in different ways. They are found near the bottom of the toolbar. Draw normal, draw behind, and draw inside. So that's going to be this button right here. Drawing modes, which is Shift D. So draw normal mode. Every document starts by drawing in normal mode, which stacks shapes on top of each other. Draw behind mode. This allows you to draw behind the artwork on a layer if no artwork is selected. And if artwork is selected, the new object is placed beneath the selected object. And then draw inside mode. This mode lets you draw objects or place images inside other objects, automatically creating a clipping mask of the selected object, which is so handy. So a clipping mask is a shape that hides part of the artwork, and you'll learn a little bit more about that in lesson 15. You'll also learn about it a lot faster if you're taking Photoshop already, or if you're drawing with Procreate, things like that, but we're going to talk about it a little here. You'll get the gist of it. The draw inside mode. So now you'll add a nose to the bear and a few other things by drawing and pasting inside the shapes using the draw inside drawing mode. This can be useful if you want to hide or mask part of the object. You can draw, place, or place content into the shape with draw inside mode active. So let's add a nose to the bear and a few other things. So in the toolbar, you'll see that the drawing, if the toolbar you see is displayed as a double column, you will see all 3 of the drawing modes as buttons towards the bottom of the toolbar. So right now we just have 1 column, so we're all set. But we want to click to select the bear head. Then we want to choose draw inside from the drawing mode menu near the bottom right of the toolbar. So we'll switch it to draw inside. And now you see those little dotted lines appear. Press and hold on the star tool to switch it to the ellipse tool, and then draw a circle. So we're going to hold shift and drag. Draw a circle on the bear head that will become the nose, so we're going to see the figure. So what I want to do is I'm going to switch from the star to the ellipse. I'm going to change my fill right now to black. And then I'm going to draw out a circle, so I'm going to hold shift and drag. And you can see that it has already made a clipping mask. So what that's saying is my circle is only going to appear where the pixels overlap with the lower shape. Okay, so we've changed our fill color to black, and then with the selection tool selected, drag the circle into position where the nose might go. If you drag the circle so that it extends beyond the edges of the bear's head, you will see that part is hidden because it is inside the bear head. So now you'll draw a line to give the bear a smile. So press and hold on the ellipse and switch it to the line segment tool, and then draw a straight line that will be the mouth of the bear. So we have a line tool. He looks so dorky. And we are going to just drag a line down, and we can hold shift if we want to. That'll make it a 45-degree angle. I don't think it needs to be quite that. So we're going to set the stroke width to 2 pixels, and we want the color to be black. So we'll set it to black, and we'll make it 2 pixels, 2 points. And then we'll click the drawing modes button and towards the bottom of the toolbar, and we'll set it back to draw normal. When you've finished adding content inside a shape, you can choose draw normal so that any new content you will create will be drawn normally or stacked rather than drawn inside. So let's practice with draw inside mode. Now you'll take the brown chamfered box that we had before and paste it into the body of the bear to make the belly. With the selection tool, click the rectangle and chamfered edge to select it and change the fill color to a lighter brown. Okay, oops, I don't know where that line came from. Let's click on our brown box, and we're going to switch the color to an even lighter brown, maybe this one. And then we'll choose edit and cut from the artboard. So we'll do edit and cut, which is Control X or Command X on a Mac. Then we will select the body of the bear. Then we'll switch our drawing mode to draw inside again. And then if the toolbar you see is displayed as, oh sorry, it's just reading that again, then we will do edit paste, which is also Control V or Command V on a Mac. Alrighty, the artwork is pasted within the bear body shape, and you'll get it into place in the next section. Click the drawing modes button and switch it back to draw normal, and then select, deselect, and do a file save. So we'll set it to draw normal, and then file, and then save. Alrighty. Editing content drawn inside. Next, you'll make adjustments to the bear's belly to see how you can edit an object inside another object after you've created it. With the selection tool selected, try clicking the lighter bear belly shape, and you'll wind up selecting the darker brown bear body that it's inside of. So you see, if I click it, I can't just click on that inner shape anymore. It's going to choose the whole body. The bear body is now a mask called a clipping path. The bear body and the belly artwork you pasted inside make a clipping group. Looking at the top of the properties panel, you will see clip group. So you see right here, it's a clip group. With the clipping group selected, click Isolate Mask button in the properties panel to enter isolation mode. You can see, now you can select either the clipping path, the brown bear body shape, or the lighter brown artwork pasted within. Okay, so we can choose Isolate Mask down here. And it has a tip for us. It says, as with a group, you can also just double click it and clip and the clip group to enter isolation mode. So let's try that together too. So we have our item selected. If we double click it, now we are in the clipping group isolation mode. Alright, so drag the lighter brown belly shape to look more like you see in the figure. If you can also use the arrow keys to move it and make it smaller and perform any other type of transformations as well. If you accidentally drag the whole thing, choose Edit and Undo Move. Make sure that you are in isolation mode, and you should see a bar along the top edge of the document window, and the rest of the artwork is dimmed. So refer to the previous step. So if it's not dimmed, your bear head and the legs are going to be that same dark brown color that they've been. Just double check and make sure you're in isolation mode, and then we'll select this intersection and drag it down. And we want to I'm going to hold shift so that it's centered, and it looks like it wants it just a little bit below where it's not aligned with those leg shapes. You can also just push the arrow keys if you want to tap it into place. And I believe we can also say that we want to select this and center it. Yeah, that looks good. And then we can press escape to exit isolation mode, and you'll probably see that the legs are in front of the bear body. So you see it was behind it when we were dragging, and then it switched it, and now they're in front. So we want to drag across both of the legs and the triangles of the claws, and we'll set arrange and send to back. So we want everything down here. I'm going to use my selection tool. I'm going to drag from the left to the right so that that marquee is around everything, and then we are going to go to object, arrange, and send to back. So we can go up to the top, object, arrange, send it back. We can also do shift, control, and the left bracket key. I move my legs up and further apart also. Then you can choose select and deselect. So they like theirs to be a little bit wider. I think it looks really cute like this, but let's do the same thing that they're doing. I'm gonna scooch these. Let's do everything. I'm gonna hold shift as I click my arrow keys to move them up in a higher increment instead of just by single pixels. And then I'm going to select the bear leg and the triangle, and I'm going to scooch that to the right. That seems good. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. that looks similar. Maybe a little bit high. Sure. Okay. Working with Draw Behind mode. To learn about drawing behind existing content, they have a video for you. And then you can do pasting artwork behind documents. Next, you'll paste the bear logo that you've created so far into the Illustrator document that contains the flyer design. So to select all of the bear artwork, choose Select All on Active Artboard. So we'll do Select All on Active Artboard. That's also going to be Alt-Control-A. And if you're on a Mac, it is Option-Command-A. Copy it by choosing Edit Copy or Control-C or Command-C. So we'll do Edit Copy, Control-C. And then choose File, open the other lesson file, Lesson 3 flyer, and then I already have that pulled up here. And then we're going to click on the blank artboard on the right to make that one the active one, so you can see that it's set to number 2 down at the bottom. And then we can do, we're going to fit it in the window, so we'll do Control-0 or Command-0, and then we'll click Edit Paste, or Control-V, or Command-V, Paste, to paste the bear logo onto our artboard. And then we'll group it, which we can use the taskbar for it down here. We can also use the quick actions over here on the right. And then we can deselect it. Next, we're going to use Image Trace to convert images into editable vector art. So in this part of the lesson, you'll learn how to work with Image Trace command, which converts a raster image like a JPEG into an editable vector artwork. Tracing can help turn something you drew on paper, for instance, a logo perhaps, a pattern or a texture or a hand-drawn type, into an editable vector art. In this selection, you'll trace hand-drawn text that is part of the logo type. So let's do a file place. We'll do File, Place, Control-Shift-P, which will be Command-Shift-P on a Mac. And then what we want to do is grab the hand-drawn text. Okay, so we're going to choose File and Place. So we're in that Lesson 3 folder, and we're going to select the hand-drawn text, and then click in the artboard to place the image. So we'll say Place, and we'll just place it anywhere in here. And then we'll select Check Image, and then and center it into the image document, and choose View, and we'll zoom in a few times so we can say Place, and we can move it to the center. And with the image selected, click the Image Trace button in the Properties panel in the right of the document, and then choose 3 colors from the menu. So we're going to choose this Image Trace button, and we're going to choose 3 colors. And it says, note, you can also choose Object, Image Trace, Make with Raster Content Selected, or begin tracing from the Image Trace panel in Window and Image Trace. So if the image is converted into a vector now, and it's called Image Tracing Object, and you can see that in the top up here. You can't edit the vector content yet, but you can still try other tracing settings. So an image tracing object comprises the source image and the tracing result, which is the vector artwork. By default, only the tracing result is visible. However, you can change the display of both the original and the tracing result. Click on the Open Image Trace panel it's this button in the Properties panel, so we'll click right here. And then they have a tip. The Image Trace panel can be opened by choosing Window, Image Trace. The buttons at the top of the Image Trace panel are for converting the image to grayscale, black and white, and more. Below the buttons are at the top, and you'll see the preset menu. This menu has been the same options that you saw when you drew, that you had in the Properties panel. And the Mode menu allows you to change the color mode of the resulting artwork. So we can choose color, grayscale, or black and white, and then the palette menu is also helpful in limiting the color palette or assigning colors for the color group. So it has everything that we are looking for right here. And then we have this advanced option. We can scooch this up so we can see more of it. And it has a few different options down here. So here we're going to go for colors too. We want paths to be set to 100%. We want corners to be set to 25%. And then we want noise to be set to 50 pixels. Alrighty. In the panel still, click on Ignore Color. This lets you sample a color that will be excluded from the image tracing. So we're going to use the eyedropper tool. I'm going to say Ignore Color, and then we want to say don't worry about this yellow. And you see, there are a lot of options in the image trace panel for you to explore. You will see an option for Simplify, and I'm pointing out that out because you will learn about Simplify command with more options in the next section. So close the image trace panel, and with the text still selected, click the Expand button in the Properties panel. So we're going to click right here, Expand. The text is no longer an image tracing object, but it is composed of shapes and paths that are grouped together. So now we can clean up the traced artwork. So let's do a file save. Okay, cleaning up traced artwork. Since the text image has been converted to shapes using image trace command, you can refine the shapes to make the text look better. You'll apply the Simplify command to make the edges a bit smoother. The Simplify command reduces the number of anchor points that the path is made of without affecting the overall shape very much. It can be used to remove imperfections in the traced path when the image trace is used. So with the text selected, choose Object, Path, and then Simplify. So we're going to go up here, and we're going to do Object, we'll choose Path, and then we'll choose Simplify. And so I'm going to zoom in so that you can see what it did. So if we do Control Z, you see all of these little dots throughout here. And then if I do Control Shift Z, you can see that it cleaned up a few of those, and it could probably be even more so, but we still want to get a little bit of that texture and bend. So in the Simplify options that appear, the Reduce Anchor Point slider is set to Auto Simplified value by default. Drag the slider all the way to the left to remove a lot of points and see what it looks like. So let's do that again. We'll go Object, Path, and Simplify. And then let's drag this all the way over. And you can see how much it's cleaned that up. So you can see how curvy it looks, and then we want a little bit of a bend, but not quite so much. Dragging the slider to the left reduces the anchor points and simplifies the path. The closer the slider is to the minimum value on the left, the fewer anchor points there are, but the path will most likely look different. The closer the slider is to the maximum value, the more it will look like it did before you applied the Simplify command. So click the Auto Simplify button, this one right here, and to set the default amounts again. And then we'll click on the More Options button, so the little three dots. In the Simplify options bar, to open a dialog box with more options in the dialog box that opens, make sure Preview is selected to see the changes happen. So we've got Preview turned on. And you can see the original number of anchor points by original, and then of the text, and then the number of anchor points after applying the Simplify command. So you can see right here we had almost 450 points, and now the simplified version reduces it to 200 points. So this is a great starting point, and the artwork will look like it did before you applied the Simplify command. Drag the Simplify Curve slider to the left until you think it looks smoother on the edges. I set my Simplify Curve to 65%. So let's do the same. That looks a little smoother. I might go a little further than that, but personal preference. Do the same for the corner point angle threshold. Corner point angle threshold. Drag the slider until there are fewer ripples in the edges of the text. I set it to 94 degrees. So let's do the same as them. We'll do 94 degrees. Alrighty, and then for the corner point angle threshold, If the angle of a corner point is less than the angle threshold, the corner point is not changed. This option helps keep corners sharp even if the value for the curve precision is low. Alright, click OK and then do View Fit All to Window or Control 0 or Command 0 if you're on a Mac. Then select the eyedropper tool from the toolbar and click Outdoors from the text flyer and then sample the color and apply it to track. So we're going to come over here, we'll choose the eyedropper tool, we'll click on Outdoors, and then we will drag that over to check. Adding the text and bear logo to the flyer, so now we're going to move the bear logo artwork and the text into place. So with the selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, drag the bear and the logo to the text in the flyer, and the text into the flyer and arrange them however you like. Refer to the figure for how I did it. So we've got check, we've got our bear logo. Oh. Grab them one more time, there we go. And for me, it looks like my path accidentally selected this portion too. So let's go into isolate group and get that path and delete it. There we go. If you want to resize either one, do so with the selection tool by pressing Shift, and that will maintain its proportions. Then you can do a file save. And then last is creating a vector graphic with image trace. So I'll let you guys read through that part. But that is going to be everything for this chapter. So go ahead and we're going to do a file save as. Name it your first name, week 2, and then first name, last name, week 2, and then chapter 3, and save it as an Illustrator file. And I'm gonna I'm gonna save flyer next to mine. And click OK. And then we also want to do an export of the PNG, so we'll go to File, Export, Export As, and we'll say Use Artboards. We just want the first artboard. We want to make sure this says PNG right here, and we'll say Export. Make sure in the background it's set to white, and click OK. And that'll be everything. Have a good day, you guys.